My name is Melissa Thorne, and joining me today is Bob King. Today's date is May 18th, 2019. Thank you, Councilman King, for being with me today and sharing your memories.
Well, thanks for having me. Mount Airy has been home for the past 27 years. We moved here in 1992. We actually settled on February the 28th and moved in on February the 29th, which is a leap year. So every 4 years, I get to be here for another year. So I really haven't been here 27 years. It's however many leap years it's been since then. When I moved here, well, my wife, Terry, I had a 12-year-old son named Eric, and I had a 6-year-old daughter named Jessica. And they now have their own children, and I have a 19-year-old grandson in South Korea as part of the Patriot Missile Battery crew. So he's, high technology in South Korea, and he'll be there for, well, he just went there about a month ago, and he'll be there for about another 11 months, 12 months, something like that. So
you have a big family.
Yes. Well,
Why
yeah.
did you bring them to Mount Airy? What drew you here?
Well, it's kind of funny. We lived in Frederick. We moved to Frederick in 1979. So we were there for 12 years. And things our neighborhood it started off with 2 streets, and it was back on McCain Drive, Butterfly Lane, all this stuff opened up and had thousands of homes behind me. And so we decided it was time to go. Yeah. And I had been driving 270 for 12 years every day. And so there was only 2 requirements from me and a third one from my wife about where we lived. Number 1, you could get to work without getting on 270. Number 2, you had to have a backyard big enough to be able to play volleyball in. And number 3 for her was it had to have a full-size front porch.
Oh, yep.
Okay, so we got the full-size front porch. I don't take 270. And we've never played volleyball in the backyard, but we could if we wanted to.
Okay. That's funny. The volleyball.
Yeah.
Shtick.
Well,
cheerleading was part of your family.
Cheerleading.
Was there any other sports?
My daughter was a cheerleader. My son was a real good baseball player, but about the time he went into high school baseball, he lost his confidence in himself, and he could still play, but he didn't think he could. So, not thinking you can is as bad as just not doing it.
Have you been a part of any organizations in town since you've been here?
Oh my God. Well, when I first moved in, there was a fella down the street named Norm Hammond. And Norm the day that we're moving, he comes up and introduces himself, and he's about to publish a new Village Gate directory. And he has a lot of family information, kids, ages, and all that kind of stuff, people looking for babysitters or, to try to get kids together to play and that kind of stuff. But Norm wanted us in the directory that was going to be coming out in a couple of weeks. So he ran up there and got all of our information. And then he became like my grandfather here in Mount Airy. He went to the Legion every Friday night for dinner. So we began Legion dinners on Friday nights. He was involved with the town council and coming to the meetings and our Village Gate Homeowners Association. So he was dragging me to all this stuff. And then my son's baseball went from Frederick to right here in Mount Airy, and we knew a couple kids, so we got him on a team in Mount Airy. And I was working 2 jobs, so I didn't have a whole lot of time to spend on that. And so in 1995, so it's his third season, right before the season started, the senior league commissioner came up to me and said, "Look, if you don't coach your son's team, or if you don't manage your son's team, we're going to have to split those kids up and put one on each of the other teams in the league, because we just can't find a coach." So I was working at that time 2 jobs, part-time at Giant and full-time for my father at his machine shop. And I retired from Giant. Yeah. And that's retired. I started in 72, so 72 to 95 is 23 years.
Wow.
And so I retired and I became a Maya manager.
Cool.
Well, I think my first year, they thought maybe that my sponsor was maybe a little bit inappropriate. Not really, but a little bit. So they changed my team from Gun Shack to Mount Airy Liquors.
Oh, that's silly.
And I guess Mount Airy Liquors at that time was a better
Fit for their
better
mission.
fit for the mission. In 1995, I think it was 1995, I ran for the position of Maya president. I got all involved in what was going on and everything. We had bylaws that were written in 1967. We had put up new stadium lights the year before. And so when I took over the Mount Airy Youth Athletic Association, we played baseball, football, and cheerleading. Those were our three sports. And, we had 1967. The organization was started in 1967 by firemen that wanted to play baseball. So I ran for the presidency and I was elected. So, we owed all this. We owed over $30,000 for lights on the field, and we had $10.86 in the checking account, and that was it. So, Norm Hammonds, of course, brought me to the town council and introduced me to the new town council. And so they asked me to join them for a drink and a less formal discussion across the street at the VFW after the meeting was over, which I did. And Delane Hobbs bought me a beer, and he looked at me and he said, "Bob King, why'd you have to go and get yourself elected? Everybody used to like you."
Oh no.
And that's the way it is. When you become elected, there's a lot of people that just don't like you.
And he was speaking from experience
He was
because
speaking
he'd been on the
from
council
experience.
for a while.
He's
And
been on the council, I think, since its inception. But Delane and I became very good friends, and his daughter and I still are. When Delane passed away, I always wear a Mount Airy pin whenever I have on my town council get-up. I always wear a Mount Airy pin, and one of my challenges is to give that pin to somebody that deserves it. So I took my pin off, and people were sticking a bunch of pins in the padding on the coffin up there. And his daughter took my pin and put it on his lapel.
wow.
And it's just such an honor. I've had the opportunity to, the mayor always rides some dignitary in the back of his pickup truck during the Fireman's Carnival Parade. And there used to be a guy, and I can't remember, I got kicked myself in the butt for I can't remember his name, but he served in World War II. And he used to run a little produce stand right up here before you get into Mount Airy on 27.
I actually know who you're talking about, and I don't think I ever learned his name, but I know the gentleman.
And
by his actions, I guess, at his produce stand and being in that parade.
I had an opportunity to pin him also.
Oh, wow.
And there's just people that you want to have contact with, and he's one of them. But I was elected, so in 2000, when was it? 1996, I took over as the president of Maya. $30,000. Well,
How'd you make up that money you were trying to pay for the lights?
What all the town council guys did was they took me out and they introduced me to the Rotary, the Lions Club, all of the service organizations in town. And within a little over a year, we had the $30,000 paid off and had not affected the programs at all. And then there was something that really happened, that was interesting that happened. I took office on January 1st. Okay, on January the 3rd, the Mount Airy Rec Council, the president, vice president, they asked for a meeting with me. And so we had a meeting, and I sat down and talked to them. And they were disbanding the Mount Airy Rec Council but they already had like 2,700 kids signed up in t-ball, in soccer, in inside soccer, in basketball, and all of these programs that we knew nothing about. And they wanted us, Carroll County specifically, Carroll County Board of, they have a different name, Bureau of Recreation or something like that. They had several meetings with us, and on a handshake we decided that, you know, something had to happen, and we were the expert at kids sports, and so as long as we had volunteers that would help us run these sports, and as long as Carroll County committed to field usage, and you know, it wasn't going to be something that we were going to fight over every year. Field usage was going to be, we would take what we need. We don't take what we don't need, but we would take what we need and use the fields. And Jeff Degetz was the chairman at that time, and he shook my hand, and that handshake holds today. So, you know, we get the fields we need from Carroll County to operate our sports.
And he's still with Parks and Recreation.
Yes, he's still with Parks and Recreation, and he remembers me.
So you've been involved with the Mount Airy Youth Athletic Association, and you've also are a councilman for a few days now. Yeah. So tell us about that experience.
Well, along with being elected the president of MAYA came a seat on the Parks and Recs board.
Okay.
So I guess in 1996, I went on Parks and Recs. In 2012, 2012, I ran for, there was not a position open, but I thought it was time that maybe we had some new blood on the town council. I would watch the meetings on TV because, you know, we can turn on the TV and watch meetings live streamed now. Yeah. And I would watch the meetings, and I was getting a little upset at some of the rhetoric that was going on, and there was no civility at all. You had two very distinct groups, and they really just couldn't seem to get their act together. So, of course, I'm the act together getter. And so I ran successfully for a town council position. And boy, was that a learning experience. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that you don't see. And it's just, it was a big experience. I got a congratulations call from the mayor the day after I won. And he was not somebody that wanted to see me win, but so he asked me, he said, you know, you have to be a liaison to commissions. He said, I was thinking of putting you in Parks and Recs because that's what you know. And I asked him not to do that. Of course, first I asked for planning and economic development, and he just laughed. He said, everybody wants planning and economic development. Right. I said, I'm just kidding, Pat. I know that I'm on the bottom of the totem pole here. And he said, well, what do you want? And I said, anything but Parks and Recs, because I don't want to become one-dimensional. And, you know, and that can happen to people. And I still, I mean, you know, I'm a strong advocate for Parks and Recs and the things that happen there, and I'm involved with the Project Open Space grants and all that kind of stuff. Yes. And it's all kind of behind the scene because I just don't, well, I want to do everything I can, but I don't want anybody to think that, you know, I'm running roughshod over Parks and Recs. So he appointed me to sanitation, and I had a blast, and I learned so much, and had so much fun at the meetings. It's, you know, it's a fun group. You're always doing things. Let's see, I was there, then I was on the Water Commission, and currently I'm Economic Development and the Planning Commission.
You finally got there.
I finally got there. But it's like the Planning Commission, it's not just, or the Economic Development Commission, it's not just one meeting a month. Because we're trying to figure out, with economic development, you have Mount Airy Main Street Association, you have the Greater Mount Airy Chamber of Commerce, And all of these three entities are involved in economic development in our town.
Right.
So we've been very, very lucky to have Melissa as our staff.
Thank you.
Donna Marie Needle is our chair of the Economic Development Commission. And there was a guy named Justin Stankiewicz that was the president at the time of the Greater Mount Airy Chamber of Commerce. We now have Ray Miller, and they're very involved. We all attend 3 meetings so that you have the 3 voices that are being heard in economic development, and we can actually sit down and do things that seem to work and seem to be smart. And when you include everybody, you get so many people on board that, you know, economic development in downtown Mount Airy is just, it's rocking right now.
Yes, it is.
And it's, you know, I'm sad to be leaving that part. Because I didn't run for re-election here. I was re-elected I ran in 2012, and I was re-elected in 2015, and this was a 4-year term. That was a 3-year term. So, I don't want to go because we are right on the cusp of some very, very neat things happening. But my wife seems to think that, well, no, I'm not going to blame it on her. We need to, you know, kind of downsize our lives a little bit. We got this huge house with 2 people living in it, and 27 years of stuff that, you know, we have to get rid of.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff, you know. As you get older, life changes a little bit. And I didn't want to leave the town council, but I don't see where I have a choice for me personally. I have too many things that have to be done right now, which means I could not have campaigned. I could have run, but I wouldn't have been able to campaign, and I won't do it if I can't campaign. That's the part I like the best. Walking around, shaking citizens' hands and talking to them. And I had a lot of supporters out there. I've had the honor of a lot of people casting a vote for me, and I don't think there is any higher honor than somebody casting a vote for you to run their town for the next 4 years. So.
Well, I've been around as when you started, so it's been a pleasure, you know, seeing you serve, and I thank you for your service on the town council. I know you've made a huge difference to this town, and I know that you'll continue to be here, be present in Mount Airy, however that is, you know.
Right.
Not the same capacity as a council person, but you're still a resource here, and we're grateful for that.
Well, you know, the mayor says he has some projects that will actually be easier for me to complete as a private citizen than as a member of an elected body. And so I'm kind of interested in that. Changing lives around. I'm, you know, training for a different job now, something that I've never ever thought that I would do until about 4 weeks when it possibly raised its head, and you know, here I am, trying to become a school bus driver.
Yes.
But we'll see how that works. It's a very involved process.
So speaking a little bit of the school and thinking back to when your family was here starting and the kids, what was it like raising your kids in this town?
When I grew up in Rockville, okay, and the people that my parents worked every day, and I was 12 years old when we moved to Rockville, and you know, my dad was the kind that, you know, he laid down the rules, and as long as you abided by the rules, you got along okay. And so he sat us down and he said, Rockville's a big town. You can go anywhere you want in this town, that you can get on your bicycle or whatever. Dinner's at 5 o'clock. Lord help you if you're not there and washed and ready for dinner at 5 o'clock. And I will determine when the street lights are off or the street lights are on, not you. So, you know, when it gets dark, you're expected in the house. And the police, you better hope the police never bring you home. And so that was the 3 rules.
Okay.
You know, it's street lights, 5 o'clock dinner, and so we actually got along. We did pretty well in Rockville because it was easy when the street lights come on. They all come on at the same time. and that kind of stuff. It made it real easy to, you know, my children here, when we first moved here, my daughter she went to Newmarket Elementary as a first grader. I believe she's here as a first grader. And my son went to Newmarket Middle. And they got absorbed by this community, and there was never a day that they didn't have friends hanging around or that kind of stuff. And it, you know, is a nice, small town community. If you had a question about something having to do with water, well, Delane Hobbs was right up the street here, and he would meet with you at any time. He'd talk to you about it, and it was a nice small town where you could actually go and talk to people.
And this was in the 90s.
Yeah, this was, you know, mid-90s. You can still do that. As a town councilman, I have people that come up to me all the time and want to know what's going on with this and, you know, what's going on with that. And, you know, had a chance to see your little speech on such and such a thing, and I agree with you wholeheartedly and blah, blah, blah. I mean, and I'm talking about pumping gas at 7-Eleven. You know, the guy next to you starts talking to you. And at one of the forums a few years ago, and I don't believe it was one that I was running, so I was helping Bill Butts with the forum, and I had brought in a cooler full of water and stuck it back there, and the Carroll Media Center was taping all of these so that they could stream them later on, so everybody would get a chance to view the forum. And this guy from Carroll Media Center is just talking to me and talking to me and talking to me. And he finally stopped and he looked at my face and he said, "You don't have a clue who I am, do you?" And I said, "No, I do not." And he said, "Well, for the last 7 years, okay, he said, something that you say more than anything else to us is, okay, CMC, are you ready? Wiggle a camera." And he said, "I always wiggle the camera and look right at you."
Oh, yay.
So, you know.
Well, how would you see them through the camera, you know?
I don't. And, you know, so I knew him at the last forum we did. And I guess that was when Patty and Scott Sergio were running. They did a small forum. Oh, and Mike McDonough. Matt McDonough. Yes. Matt McDonough. Yeah. But it's kind of funny how people, well, they think they know you.
Right. What's the biggest change you've seen in town from the 90s to today?
I think there's a true, instead of supporting positions, I think there's true patriotism that goes on in a town. Everybody wants the right numbers. Before, if you asked me how many baseball teams I had, I could tell you I was 16 at this age group. Okay, but 4 of those teams are all-star teams that are made up from the same group of kids as the other 16 teams. So, you know, there are ways you can embellish a little bit. And we used to embellish. We don't anymore. One of my proudest moments, one of the proudest things that I've done, okay, that makes me happier than anything else, is the zoning on the carnival grounds used to be residential, and that was to hinder the fire company from ever selling the carnival grounds. So we kept it residential. On our 2010 master plan, we changed that. We changed it from residential to commercial. Okay, and the fire company spoke, and a lot of people spoke for the fire company during that master plan process. Very few spoke about keeping it residential zoned. And the fire company said, first thing we're going to do is, if we get the right zoning up there, we're going to fix that building up there, and you'll have a nice place here in Mount Airy. And then we're going to do some work on the carnival grounds and that kind of stuff. And I trusted them. And once we got that changed on the master plan, what did they do? They spent $1 million on that building up there. Okay, and they spent more money on the stands in the carnival grounds. So I'm very proud to have been a part of that. And we started off with not very many people wanting that, other than firemen. And everybody thought that, they want to get the value on the property up and then sell it. Well, they don't want to sell it. That piece of property makes money for them every day of the year. So, and that's my proudest moment as a town councilman.
Can you speak towards the events in town? What have you seen tradition-wise over the years, and maybe some of the unique events that we do?
Used to be that we did the spring fling and the, I'll say October, or the fall festival.
Yes.
Spring fling and fall festival. And they were 2-day events, Saturday and Sunday, both of them. And that's where I got my first taste of events. Stuff packed the streets. This little town from Hood Street to Prospect, the road was closed, they packed the street. When they closed up for the night, they folded their stuff and left it right there, okay? So, although you could come down Main Street, from the time the festival closed down Saturday night and then opened back up on Sunday morning, you could drive down here, but it wasn't what I would suggest. It's just weaving in and out of things.
Sure.
Now we have some things that have become. We have a chili cook-off, and the town does. The chili cook-off is basically run by the 4 County Lions and the Mount Airy Main Street Association, MAMSA, and the town takes on the obligation or the responsibility of advertising for that. And over the last few years, our advertising has gotten better and better and better. We're reaching more and more people. And the chili cook-offs have really been events to be a part of. And my favorite, and your favorite, I'm sure too. We put a tent out in the street in front of Town Hall, and we challenge people to come talk to us. Come ask us what's going on in town. Ask us about the water lines and the stuff that we're working on. And we get a lot of people that come talk to us. And to me, it's great to be able to sit down there and talk to people. And in the past, we've had them in the month of April. And so every other year, they were always like what kicked off the campaigns for everybody running for town council or mayor positions. There was always a lot of politics every other year. And it was a great way to meet people and shake hands and listen to ideas. And so that's what I love about it. And I love the atmosphere. It's everybody partying and having a great time.
Right.
And I think it's things like that bring this town together. We have events that have proven to be very, very successful. And we're kind of we have a couple of businesses up past Hood Street that we're trying to add in to get involved, and that's Calvary United Methodist Church. And right next to them, right before Paradise, is a little Spanish foods store. And trying to get these people involved in the downtown process. And at the same time, we're doing this as MAMSA, okay, and EDC and the Greater Mount Airy Chamber of Commerce are saying, okay, so we got this group downtown we're doing this for. What about these people on the outside? What about Food Line? How do we get Food Line involved in this? And so that's what our thinking on EDC is now, and that's why it's so exciting, because you're doing things that you've never done before. And you're trying to plan for every contingency and understand what you're doing. Is this helping? Are we hurting? What is it doing? With something that's come up is the Tour of Possibilities. Is that?
Yeah, and Envision Mount Airy, a tour of possibilities is like the tagline.
Envision Mount Airy. So what we will do is on a particular day, it's June the 15th?
11th.
June the 11th.
Close.
That's right. But on June the 11th, as many people as we can pack in a couple of buses, we're going to ride around to areas of the town that have vacancies, places that you could, in Twin Ridge, you can build a building. In downtown Mount Airy, there may be a building available for you. So that we begin to start taking an inventory of the places that businesses could open up. And we're trying real hard to encourage business to come and maybe make the job a little bit easier by, having some of this stuff for them to look at. I'm sorry.
That's okay. You know what, Bob? You're doing a lot of talking, so it's bound to happen.
Well, I only got a half hour.
I know. And I know, I hate to wrap it up, but I'm going to ask you one last question. If you had to describe Mount Airy to somebody who's never been to the town, never heard of the town, how would you describe it? And then where would you suggest that they visit when they're here?
If I had to describe it and I could only use one word, it's home.
Oh, okay.
This is home to me and my family and most of my friends over the last 20 couple years. I am so glad that we moved here and not somebody else when we left Frederick. You're encouraged, every entity in town encourages you to get involved. If you come to meetings, they want you to get involved. If you really want to get involved, run for one of these positions. But there are always people. They encourage you to get involved. And I'm a member at Calvary United Methodist Church, and I was an usher. And I really thought I was giving my all to the church. And one day somebody walked up to me and said, I was having a conversation with God last night and your name came up. We need somebody to teach 13-year-old
Religious education?
Yes, but it's got a name. Oh, God, I can't believe this. This is what happens when you get old. This is such a big deal, and I'm not the name.
It'll come to you.
It's what you're doing with these young ladies and young men is you're making them. It's God 101. You're introducing them to God, and giving them the opportunity to become a member of the church.
Okay.
And it's their decision, and it is called
Confirmation.
Confirmation.
Yes, we
there
got
you
there.
Go. Ah.
We got there.
Okay, so. And, they needed somebody to teach a confirmation class. And this is the first year I haven't done it since then. And it's been an absolute pleasure to be involved with these young ladies and young men at 13, 14, 15 years old. Right. We have a lot of good people in this church or in this town that are, as I move on, they'll fill in. There's something about sitting up here where it changes you. Okay, you become the mouth for the citizens, and that's a very, very important responsibility. And every person sitting at that table knows it. You get elected, and it changes you. And I am so happy to have been a part of that. I'm not done yet. We still got stuff to do. But Mount Airy rocks.
Councilman King, thank you so much for your time today, and it's been a pleasure interviewing you.
Well, thank you, Melissa. I hope you stay with this town until you retire.